Hey guys, Joe here from Right Way. In this video, what we're going to talk about is renegotiation of the purchase price prior to closing the property, right, or the close date. So there is a certain period of time where really the renegotiation needs to happen, and that is within your option period. If you try to renegotiate the purchase price outside of that option period, they know they can hold your feet to the fire from the earnest money, right? So go back and watch the video on the explanation of the earnest money and the option money and how the option money protects your earnest money, right? And that's kind of going to give you a little bit more clarification on what I mean by renegotiation within your option period. So if I'm speaking to a homeowner or a realtor, and let's say the purchase price is $60,000, right? I have tailored my earnest money to be 1% of the $60,000, so my earnest money is $600. Well, let's say I gave them $50 option for 5 days for that contract, right? So after that 5 days, if I go back and try to renegotiate and they say no, what do you think happens? If I don't proceed with the purchase, well, then they're going to keep the earnest money. But if I'm renegotiated within that 5 days period, and then they don't agree to my reduction of price, then I'm going to be sending in a termination of contract and a release of earnest, which means the earnest money comes back to us, right? So it's a powerful thing to know that, psychologically, if a seller is under contract, in their mind the house is sold, right? They're already packing boxes, they're already planning on what they're doing with the money. So if you go back to them with the reduction for whatever reason, right, you want to price the property accordingly to start with. But you always want to make sure that you're getting, the correct fee, as much money as we possibly can. After all, it's your wholesaling business or our business, if you're with Right Way. So your renegotiation prior to the option day closing, and then you are, you're planting those seeds when you contract the property of why you need to renegotiate, right? And if you're dealing with a realtor, renegotiation in real estate is very common. Almost every house that I've flipped or listed, at some point there's been some negotiation with the terms of the contract or the purchase price, generally regarding the repairs or the condition of the property, right? A lot of times in traditional real estate, once the inspector goes out, they send the inspection report to the buyer. They notice that there's some stuff that they wouldn't have noticed before the inspection. So they're going to go to the seller and say, hey, the inspector found this. We need to knock the price down to proceed with this purchase instead of backing out of the contract. Well, when you're buying a property as an investor, you are still buying it as is, right? So you're buying it with the bad foundation, the bad roof, everything that you've seen upon your initial walkthrough. But this doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't make calculations on the spot that turn out to be far worse than they are, right? So maybe you went and you looked at the 5 majors and you noticed that there was something slightly off with the foundation. Maybe the door was struggling to close, or you saw a little crack. Well, you're agreed to the price with the realtor, but at the same time you might need to tell them, I know there's foundation, we are buying the property as is, but just off the top of my head, I'm calculating this is going to cost $1,000 or $2,000. But I need to get my foundation guy in here, my expert in here, to tell me the true extent of the foundation damage, right? Well, I don't want to be sending my foundation guy to every single property that I look at. So if I'm under contract, I might set that seed with that seller or homeowner that, we're good with this price as long as the foundation bid doesn't come back excessively. Or as long as I can find out that I can keep the condenser, the ductwork upstairs. As long as the electrical doesn't have to be rewired, I'm good at this price. As long as the plumbing is okay, we have to do a hydrostatic test. As long as that's okay, we're still okay. But we're still in the same ballpark. Now, in renegotiation, if you've planted those seeds, you can kind of go back and tell the seller, I don't want you to cover this whole cost, but we need a couple $1,000s off, right, to make this still work within our criteria, within our buying box. So if you've done that within the option period and you have a valid reason, you've set those seeds, then the majority of the time you are going to get a slight reduction in the purchase price, right? So let's say you got $2,000 or $3,000 off. That's going to be a huge help, especially if you're doing 4 or 5 properties a month, or here at Right Way, we're aiming to do 10 or 15 a month. If we're getting off $2,000 or $3,000 on every purchase, that's a huge amount of money, right? So that's really where you make a big difference in your bottom line at the end of the month or the end of the year. So psychologically, a lot of times these realtors are expecting a slight reduction. The way that you are presenting this reduction to the seller or the realtor is, that you are also doing them a service, right? So let's say your foundation bid came back $5,000 higher than what you had expected, right? You are telling the seller that I am not burdening you with this whole cost. Let's you cover a portion of this cost. I'm covering a portion of this cost, right? So you are making them feel like they do have a benefit, or they did win the situation when you are going to renegotiate. The worst thing you can do is just call them up and say, hey, I need $5,000 off, or it's not a deal, right? You are in the business of explaining why you need $5,000 off, why it's a benefit. Maybe when you submit that new offer in with the reduction, you agree to waive the remainder of the option period, right? Maybe you renegotiate with 2 days left on the option period, but you tell them, if we can get this reduction from 60 down to 57, then I'm happy to, waive the remaining option period. We're definitely going through with the purchase. We're going to close it as soon as title's clear, and that'll give them a further peace of mind, right? That they're not within that kind of limbo period of the option, that the buyer could back out if they found anything too negative with the property. So just keep that in mind. It's always good to know everything on the contract that you have executed. You need to know at all times when's the closing date, when's the option period, how many days are there for it. Make sure that here at Right Way, obviously it's our job as management to send the earnest money, to send the option. But if you're watching this as part of the course on YouTube, make sure that you keep in mind, right? Because if you didn't negotiate and your option period lapses, then it's going to be a lot harder to go back and get any kind of reduction in price. So, thank you.